The autumn wind whipped across the vast Wyoming plains as Zara Maddox clutched her weathered carpetbag, squinting at the approaching Genoa train station. Her future a man she'd never met, and a life she could only imagine waited somewhere beyond the wooden platform. It was 1878, and at 22 years old, she had risked everything on the promise of marriage to a stranger who needed a wife as badly as she needed a new beginning. The train's whistle pierced the air as it slowed, metal wheels screeching against the tracks. Zara smoothed the wrinkles from her best blue dress, the fabric worn thin at the elbows but clean and pressed. Her reflection in the train window showed a plain face with intelligent hazel eyes, her brown hair pulled back in a practical bun. She wasn't beautiful by society's standards. Her nose was slightly too long, her chin a touch too pointed, but her mother had always told her beauty came from within. "Last stop, Genoa, Wyoming territory," the conductor called, swinging through the passenger car. "All disembark." Zara gathered her meager belongings and stepped onto the platform, her legs stiff from the 3-day journey from Pennsylvania. The small frontier town spread before her, a main street lined with wooden buildings, a church steeple rising in the distance, and mountains framing the horizon. After her parents' deaths from influenza last winter, the advertisement in the matrimonial news had seemed like divine providence. "Rancher seeks God-fearing woman of good character as wife. Passage paid." She scanned the faces of those waiting at the station, searching for Zachary Olsen, the man whose letters had painted pictures of a modest cattle ranch, honest work, and the possibility of companionship. His correspondence had been straightforward but kind, mentioning his 30 years of age, his 5 years of ranch ownership, and his desire for a family. A tall man with sun-weathered skin approached, his hat in his hands. "Miss Maddox?" he asked, his voice deep but hesitant. "Yes," she answered, extending her hand. "Mr. Olsen," he nodded, taking her hand briefly. "Welcome to Genoa. I hope your journey wasn't too difficult." Up close, Zachary Olsen was more handsome than she'd expected, broad-shouldered with kind blue eyes, and a strong jaw partially hidden beneath a neatly trimmed beard streaked with auburn. His clothes were clean but worn, speaking of a man who worked hard and took pride in his appearance despite limited means. "The journey was long but uneventful," Zara replied, trying to hide her nervousness. "Thank you for the train ticket. I'll work hard to repay your investment." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, perhaps, but he merely nodded and reached for her bag. "My wagon's just over here. We've got about an hour's ride to the ranch." As he loaded her bag, Zara noticed a slender blonde woman watching them from across the platform. The woman was striking delicate features, golden curls peeking from beneath an expensive-looking bonnet and a dress that spoke of Eastern money. She approached with a confident stride, her smile dazzling. "Mr. Olsen," she called, her voice musical. "I believe we've been corresponding as well." Zachary's face registered confusion as the woman extended a gloved hand. "Vivian Harlow, I arrived on yesterday's train. The hotel said you might be here today meeting another arrangement." Her eyes flicked dismissively toward Zara. "Miss Harlow," Zachary said, his brow furrowed. "I don't understand. I only placed one advertisement. Oh, but your brother assured me you'd be delighted with the change in plans," Vivian replied smoothly. "He said a man of your standing deserved better than what the usual channels might provide." She smiled again, this time with a hint of triumph as she glanced at Zara's worn dress. Zara's stomach clenched. "Brother." Zachary had mentioned a younger brother in his letters, Ethan, who lived in Denver and worked as a banker. Had he taken it upon himself to find a more suitable match? The humiliation burned her cheeks as she stood there, an unwanted package delivered by mistake. Zachary's jaw tightened. "I wasn't aware of any such arrangement, Miss Harlow." His voice was controlled, but Zara could hear the tension. "If you'll excuse us for a moment." He guided Zara a few steps away, his expression troubled. "Miss Maddox, I apologize for this situation. It appears my brother has taken liberties without my knowledge or consent." Zara swallowed hard. "I understand, Mr. Olsen. I can secure lodging in town until the next train east." "No," he said quickly, then gentled his tone. "That is, unless you wish to return, I stand by our agreement. You traveled all this way based on my word." Before Zara could respond, Vivian appeared at Zachary's elbow. "Your brother described your ranch so vividly, Mr. Olsen. I'm simply dying to see it. He mentioned you have the finest cattle operation in the county." Zachary's expression darkened. "My brother tends toward exaggeration, Miss Harlow. I have a modest spread that requires hard work and offers few luxuries." "I'm not afraid of a little work," Vivian said, though her soft hand suggested otherwise. "And I've brought my own luxuries." She gestured toward a towering stack of trunks being unloaded from the train. Zachary ran a hand through his hair, visibly uncomfortable. "Miss Harlow, there's clearly been a misunderstanding. I never authorized my brother to, perhaps," Zara interrupted quietly. "You should speak with Miss Harlow privately, Mr. Olsen. I can wait by the general store." "That won't be necessary," Zachary said firmly. He turned to Vivian. "Miss Harlow, I apologize for my brother's interference, but I already have an agreement with Miss Maddox. I'll be happy to cover your expenses while in town and your return fare." Vivian's pleasant expression hardened. "Mr. Olsen, I left a comfortable position in Boston on the understanding that a marriage was arranged. Your brother assured me. My brother had no right to make any such assurances," Zachary said, his voice taking on a steely edge that surprised Zara. "If you wish to speak with him about compensation for your troubles, I'll provide his address in Denver." Vivian's gaze shifted from Zachary to Zara, her beautiful face calculating. "I see. You prefer her." The contempt in her voice made Zara wince. Zachary straightened to his full height. "What I prefer, Miss Harlow, is honesty. Miss Maddox corresponded with me directly. We made an arrangement based on mutual need and respect. I honor my commitments." Vivian's eyes narrowed. "Your brother said you were ambitious. He clearly misjudged you." She turned to walk away, then paused to look back at Zara. "Enjoy your rustic life, Miss Maddox." As she stalked away, Zara released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Mr. Olsen, you needn't feel obligated." "If you would prefer beauty fades, Miss Maddox," he interrupted, watching Vivian's retreating figure. "Character doesn't. My father taught me that." He turned to Zara, his expression softening. "I judged you by your letters, your words, your thoughts, your values. That's what matters to me." Relief flooded through Zara, though uncertainty lingered. "All the same, this isn't how either of us expected to begin." "Few things worth having start perfectly," Zachary replied with a small smile. "Now shall we head to the ranch, Mrs. Hopkins, my housekeeper, will have supper waiting, and you must be exhausted." As they climbed into the wagon, Zara couldn't help glancing back at Vivian Harlow, who stood speaking with the station master, her face flushed with anger. Zara wondered if she'd made an enemy before she'd even properly arrived in Genoa. The hour-long journey to Zachary's ranch passed with sporadic conversation, both of them navigating the awkwardness of their situation. Zara learned that Zachary had come west after the war, working as a ranch hand before saving enough to buy his own small spread 5 years ago. "It's not much," he said as they crested a hill, revealing a modest homestead nestled in a valley. 160 acres, 30 head of cattle, some chickens, 2 horses besides these wagon mules, and a vegetable garden that's seen better days. The main house was a sturdy log structure with a stone chimney, smoke curling from it against the darkening sky. A barn and several outbuildings completed the homestead. It wasn't grand, but it was well maintained, a testament to the owner's character. "It's lovely," Zara said sincerely. After her parents' deaths and months of working as a seamstress in cramped, dingy quarters, the open space and fresh air felt like luxury. As they approached, a stout woman with gray-streaked hair emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. "About time," she called. "Stew's been ready this past half hour, Mrs. Hopkins," Zachary said as he helped Zara down from the wagon. "This is Miss Maddox." The older woman assessed Zara with shrewd eyes. "Well, at least you look like you know which end of a broom to use. Come inside, child. You must be famished." The interior of the house was simple but clean: a main room with a stone fireplace, a kitchen area with a cast iron stove, a dining table with 4 chairs, and a couple of comfortable-looking armchairs. Doors led to what Zara assumed were bedrooms. "You'll stay in the spare room until the wedding," Mrs. Hopkins said matter-of-factly. "I've made up the bed with fresh linens." "About that," Zachary said carefully. "Given the circumstances, I think we should allow Miss Maddox some time to settle in before making any formal arrangements." Zara looked at him gratefully. The idea of marrying immediately after the day's events was overwhelming. "HMPH," Mrs. Hopkins snorted. "People will talk." "Let them," Zachary replied. "Miss Maddox deserves time to be certain of her decision." Over a hearty beef stew and fresh bread, they discussed practical matters. Mrs. Hopkins lived in a small cabin behind the main house and came daily to cook and clean. She would continue until Zara felt comfortable taking over those duties. The nearest neighbors were 2 miles away: the Hanson family, who had 5 children and occasionally helped with cattle drives. After the meal, Zachary excused himself to tend to the evening chores, leaving Zara with Mrs. Hopkins. "He's a good man," the older woman said abruptly as she cleared the dishes. "Works too hard. Needs someone to remind him there's more to life than cattle and crops." "We're still strangers," Zara admitted, rising to help with the washing up. "Everybody starts as strangers, Mrs. Hopkins replied pragmatically. "It's what you become that matters." That night, lying in an unfamiliar bed, Zara reviewed the day's events. She traveled to marry a stranger, only to find another woman had been sent to replace her, deemed more suitable by a brother she'd never met. Yet Zachary had honored their agreement, choosing her plain face and honest words over Vivian's beauty and evident wealth. It was a beginning, though not the one she'd expected. The next morning brought a routine that would become familiar in the coming weeks. Zachary rose before dawn to tend the livestock, while Zara helped Mrs. Hopkins prepare breakfast. They worked together during the day, Zachary managing the cattle, repairing fences, and handling the hard physical labor of the ranch, while Zara took on the household tasks, learned to garden in Wyoming's challenging climate, and gradually took over more of the cooking. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, sometimes reading, sometimes talking about their pasts, their hopes, their views on life. Zachary was well-read despite his frontier existence, and Zara found his perspectives thoughtful. They discovered shared values: honesty, hard work, fairness, and complementary differences. He was methodical where she was intuitive. She was patient where he was sometimes impulsive. A week after her arrival, Zara made her first trip into town with Zachary to purchase supplies. As they loaded sacks of flour and sugar into the wagon, she noticed whispers and glances from the townspeople. "Ignore them," Zachary said quietly. "Small towns thrive on gossip. What are they saying?" Zara asked, though she feared she knew. Zachary sighed. Miss Harlow has been staying at the hotel, apparently waiting for me to come to my senses. She's made quite an impression on the town, especially the unmarried men. As if summoned by their conversation, Vivian appeared from the millinery shop, radiant in a pale green dress that highlighted her golden hair and fair complexion. She spotted them immediately and approached with the confidence of a woman accustomed to admiration. "Mr. Olsen, Miss Maddox," she greeted them with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How quaint to see you in town." "Miss Harlow," Zachary acknowledged with a polite nod. "I'm surprised to find you still in Genoa." "Oh, I've grown quite fond of your little town," she replied. "Everyone has been so welcoming. In fact, Mayor Williams has invited me to stay with his family while I decide my future plans." Zara noticed several townspeople watching the exchange with undisguised interest. Vivian was clearly playing to an audience. "I wish you well, then," Zachary said, offering his arm to Zara. "If you'll excuse us, we have errands to complete." As they walked away, Vivian called after them, "Mr. Olsen, the Williamses are hosting a social gathering Saturday next. The mayor specifically asked me to extend an invitation to you and your companion." Zachary hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you for the invitation." As they continued to the general store, Zara asked, "Do you wish to attend?" "Not particularly," he admitted. "But in a community this small, maintaining good relations is important. Mayor Williams controls water rights that affect several ranches, including mine." "Then we should go," Zara said simply, though the thought of facing Vivian in a social setting made her stomach tighten. The days leading up to the social gathering passed quickly, filled with the endless tasks of ranch life. One afternoon, as Zara was hanging laundry, she spotted a rider approaching a young man whose resemblance to Zachary was unmistakable, though his clothes were finer and his bearing more citified. She hurried to find Zachary, who was repairing a harness in the barn. "I believe your brother is arriving." Zachary's expression darkened as he set aside his work and strode toward the house. Zara followed at a distance, not wanting to intrude on a family matter but concerned about the tension evident in Zachary's posture. Ethan Olsen dismounted with the awkward movements of someone unused to horseback. He was younger than Zachary by perhaps 5 years, handsome in a polished way and sporting a fashionable mustache. "Zach," he called with forced joviality. "Surprise." "Ethan," Zachary acknowledged coldly. "What brings you from Denver? Can't a man visit his only brother?" Ethan asked, his smile faltering as he took in Zachary's stern expression. His gaze shifted to Zara, who had stopped a few paces away. "Ah, you must be Miss Maddox, I've heard. Well, I've heard you've caused quite a stir." "I believe that distinction belongs to Miss Harlow," Zara replied evenly. "The woman you sent to replace me without consulting your brother." Ethan had the grace to look embarrassed. "A misunderstanding, clearly. I only had Zach's best interests at heart." "My best interests," Zachary repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "You had no right, Ethan. No right to interfere, to make promises in my name, to humiliate 2 women with your scheming." "Scheming? That's rather harsh," Ethan protested. "Vivian comes from a good Boston family. Her father owns a shipping company. Such connections could be valuable to you, to us." "Us?" Zachary's eyebrows rose. "There is no us in my ranch business, Ethan. You made that clear when you chose banking over ranching, city life over hard work." "Always the martyr," Ethan muttered. "I came to help smooth things over. Vivian's father is furious." "He could make trouble for you, perhaps," Zachary interrupted. "I made no promises to Miss Harlow or her father. You did. Any smoothing over is your responsibility." The brothers stared at each other, years of unspoken resentments hovering between them. Finally, Ethan sighed. At least let me stay the night. It's a long ride back to town. You're welcome to sleep in the barn, Zachary said, his tone making it clear the conversation was over. He turned to Zara. Miss Maddox, would you inform Mrs. Hopkins we'll have another for supper? Dinner that evening was a tense affair. Ethan attempted several times to justify his actions, while Zachary remained coldly polite. Zara observed the brothers, noting how different they were despite their physical resemblance. Where Zachary was straightforward and grounded, Ethan seemed to view life as a series of opportunities to advance himself. After the meal, Zachary escorted his brother to the barn, returning with a grim expression. He's still convinced he was doing me a favor, he told Zara as they sat by the fire. Says I'm wasting my potential on this backwater ranch when I could be using my war record and name to move in higher circles. You fought in the war? Zara asked, realizing how little she knew about his past. Zachary nodded, staring into the flames. Union Army. 4 years. Ended as a captain, though I started as a private, not something I care to discuss often. I'm sorry, Zara said softly. I didn't mean to pry. It's not prying, he assured her, just not pleasant memories. He was silent for a moment before continuing. Ethan was too young to serve. By the time I returned home, our parents were gone fever and he'd used what money they left to establish himself in Denver. He's always been ambitious, but interfering in my life this way crosses a line. He seems to care about you, Zara offered cautiously. In his way, Zachary conceded. But he doesn't understand or respect the life I've chosen. He glanced at her. Do you? Understand, I mean, this isn't an easy life I'm offering. I didn't come west expecting ease, Zara replied honestly. I came for a chance to build something meaningful. To work alongside someone who values the same things I do. His expression softened. And do I value the same things? I believe you do, she said, though we're still learning each other. When Saturday arrived, Zara dressed in her best gown, a navy blue affair that she'd altered to follow current fashions as best she could with limited resources. Mrs. Hopkins had helped her style her hair in a more flattering arrangement than her usual severe bun, and Zachary had surprised her with a simple silver brooch he'd purchased in town. It was my mother's, he explained as she pinned it to her collar. It suits you. The compliment warmed her as they rode into town. The mayor's house was the grandest in Genoa, a 2-story structure with a wraparound porch and actual glass windows. Music and laughter spilled from the open doors as they approached. Mayor Williams greeted them effusively, a jovial man whose political ambitions were evident in his careful attention to every guest. His wife, a bird-like woman with sharp eyes, assessed Zara with barely concealed curiosity. Mr. Olsen, we're delighted you could join us, Mrs. Williams said. And this must be your mail-order bride. How interesting. Miss Maddox is my fiancée, Zachary corrected firmly. We're pleased to be included in your gathering. Inside, the parlor had been cleared for dancing, and various townspeople Zara had glimpsed during her few visits to Genoa were engaged in conversation and refreshments. Several turned to stare as they entered, and Zara felt painfully self-conscious, especially when she spotted Vivian across the room, resplendent in a burgundy gown that made Zara's altered dress seem positively dowdy. Ignore them, Zachary murmured, echoing his advice from their trip to town. You look beautiful. The compliment surprised her. In the weeks since her arrival, Zachary had been unfailingly kind but rarely demonstrative. This was the first time he'd commented on her appearance beyond practical observations. As they made their way through the room, exchanging greetings with neighbors and townspeople, Zara noticed Ethan deep in conversation with Vivian, and an older gentleman she assumed was Mayor Williams. The three of them glanced in their direction, and Zara had the distinct impression they were the topic of discussion. "Zachary," called a friendly voice, and they turned to find a weathered man approaching with a plump, smiling woman. "Good to see you in town for something besides supplies." "John, Margaret," Zachary greeted them warmly. "May I present Miss Zara Maddox? Zara, these are our neighbors, John and Margaret Hanson." "The Hansons have the ranch northeast of ours," Zachary explained. "John's been invaluable in teaching me about cattle raising." "You're a quick study," John replied. "And Miss Maddox, we're delighted to finally meet you. Our Martha, she's 12, has been begging to visit since she heard Zach had a lady at his place." "I'd be happy to meet your children," Zara said sincerely. The isolation of ranch life meant few opportunities for female companionship. "Bring them by any time," Margaret offered. "And if you need anything advice, an extra hand with preserving come harvest, don't hesitate to ask." Their friendly welcome eased some of Zara's tension, and as the evening progressed, she found herself engaged in conversation with several of the ranch wives and townswomen. Many were curious about her background and her arrangement with Zachary, but most were welcoming once they realized she wasn't the delicate Eastern flower they'd perhaps expected. Zachary stayed close, introducing her to various neighbors and business associates. When the music struck up for dancing, he hesitated only briefly before offering his hand. "I'm not much of a dancer," he admitted as they took their places for a Virginia reel. "Army camps don't provide much practice. Nor do sewing rooms," Zara replied with a smile. "We'll muddle through together." They did more than muddle. They laughed as they circled each other, their steps sometimes faltering but their enjoyment genuine. Zara felt eyes on them and glanced up to find Vivian watching, her perfect features arranged in a mask of polite interest that couldn't quite hide her displeasure. As the dance ended, Mayor Williams approached. "Mr. Olsen, might I have a word? Business matter." Zachary excused himself reluctantly, leaving Zara momentarily alone. She had just decided to find Mrs. Hanson when Ethan materialized at her side. "Miss Maddox," he said with a smoothness that immediately put her on guard. "I believe we started on the wrong foot. May I offer you some punch as a peace offering?" "Thank you," she replied cautiously, accepting the cup he offered. "My brother seems quite taken with you," Ethan observed. "Not what I expected, I admit." "And what did you expect, Mr. Olsen? Someone more amenable to guidance, perhaps?" "Zachary has potential beyond this backwater, you know. With the right connections, the right wife, your brother seems content with his life," Zara interrupted. "Perhaps you should respect his choices." Ethan's smile tightened. "Family looks out for family, Miss Maddox." Zachary could do so much better than scraping by on that hardscrabble ranch. "Better by whose standards?" Zara challenged. "He built that ranch himself. He's respected in this community. What more do you think he needs?" "Ambition," Ethan replied promptly. "Vision." The war changed him, made him too content with mere survival when he could be thriving. Before Zara could respond, Vivian glided up to them, her smile predatory. "Ethan, darling, aren't you going to introduce me properly to Miss Maddox? We've had such limited opportunity for conversation." "Of course," Ethan said smoothly. "Miss Maddox, may I present Miss Vivian Harlow of Boston? Vivian, Miss Zara Maddox." "Miss Harlow," Zara acknowledged with a polite nod. "Miss Maddox," Vivian replied, her gaze sweeping over Zara's dress with barely disguised disdain. "How are you finding ranch life? I imagine it's quite an adjustment from—" "Where did you say you were from?" "Pennsylvania," Zara answered. "And yes, Wyoming territory is different, but I'm adapting well." "How commendable," Vivian said with false sweetness. It must be challenging to manage such a large operation with so little experience. Zachary is an excellent teacher, Zara replied evenly, and I'm a quick study. Zachary, Vivian repeated, emphasizing the familiar use of his name. Yes, he does seem the patient type, so willing to settle. The implication was clear, and Zara felt heat rising in her cheeks. Before she could formulate a response that wouldn't cause a scene, she felt a warm presence at her side. "There you are," Zachary said, his hand coming to rest lightly on her back. "I apologize for the interruption." The mayor was quite determined to discuss water rights. His eyes flicked to Ethan and Vivian. "I see you're keeping my fiancé company." "Just getting acquainted," Vivian replied with a dazzling smile. "Miss Maddox was telling us how much she's learning from you." "The learning goes both ways," Zachary said, surprising Zara. "Zara has shown remarkable adaptability and brought fresh perspectives to challenges I've been tackling alone for too long." The simple praise, spoken so matter-of-factly in front of Vivian and Ethan, filled Zara with unexpected warmth. It wasn't merely politeness or a show for others. She recognized genuine appreciation in his voice. "How charming," Vivian said, her smile now brittle. "Well, I mustn't monopolize you. Mayor Williams mentioned you might provide insights on local investment opportunities, Zachary. Perhaps later." With a final pointed look at Zara, she swept away, leaving a cloud of expensive perfume in her wake. Ethan lingered awkwardly. "Zach, before you go, Father Donnelly mentioned Sunday services tomorrow. I thought perhaps we could attend together as a family." Zachary's expression softened slightly. "We attend regularly. You're welcome to join us." After Ethan departed, Zachary led Zara toward the refreshment table. "I apologize if they made you uncomfortable." "They certainly tried," Zara admitted. "Your brother seems determined to rescue you from your chosen life." Zachary sighed. "Ethan has always believed success is measured by how others see you, not by your own satisfaction. Our father was the same, always striving for the next opportunity, the next rung on the social ladder." "And you?" Zara asked. "What do you measure success by?" He considered the question thoughtfully. "Peace at the end of the day, work that has tangible results, land that flourishes under my care, and lately." He hesitated, then met her gaze directly, the possibility of sharing that life with someone who values the same. The simple statement, more than any flowery declaration, told Zara exactly where she stood. In that moment, something shifted between them, a recognition of growing feeling beyond their practical arrangement. The remainder of the evening passed pleasantly, with Zachary keeping Zara at his side as they mingled with neighbors and danced twice more. When they finally departed, the night air was crisp with the promise of autumn's deeper chill. "Thank you," Zara said as they drove home beneath a canopy of stars, "for defending me to your brother and Miss Harlow, for making me feel welcome in a gathering where I might have felt like an outsider." "You belong here as much as anyone," Zachary replied, his eyes on the road ahead. After a pause, he added, "More than some, I'd say. You've taken to ranch life with more grace than many who were born to it." The compliment warmed her against the night chill. "I've always believed we find our place by making ourselves useful where we are, not by wishing for circumstances to be different." Zachary glanced at her, his expression thoughtful in the moonlight. "My mother used to say something similar. She'd tell Ethan and me that discontent was just ambition without purpose." "She sounds wise." "She was," Zachary said softly. "She would have liked you." The simple statement felt more intimate than any touch could have been. Sunday morning brought church services, where Zara was formally introduced to Father Donnelly and various community members she hadn't met at the mayor's gathering. She noticed how many greeted Zachary with genuine respect, and how he seemed to know every family's circumstances, asking after an ailing grandmother here, a new foal there. Ethan attended as promised, though Vivian was conspicuously absent. After the service, he approached them with forced cheerfulness. "I'm returning to Denver tomorrow," he announced. "Bank business can't wait indefinitely." He hesitated, then added, "Zach, I've been thinking about what you said. I may have overstepped with the Harlow situation. My intentions were good, but you didn't consider what I actually wanted," Zachary finished for him. His tone was firm but not unkind. "We can discuss it further before you leave. Come for dinner tonight." The invitation surprised both Ethan and Zara. It was the first conciliatory gesture Zachary had offered his brother since his arrival. That evening, over a meal Zara had prepared with special care, the conversation remained stilted but civil. As they finished dessert, an apple pie Zara had baked using the last of the previous autumn's preserves, Ethan finally addressed the tension directly. "I owe you both an apology," he said, setting down his fork. "I convinced Vivian's father that Zachary was a prosperous rancher looking to expand his holdings with Eastern investment. I may have exaggerated certain aspects of the situation." "May have," Zachary repeated skeptically. Ethan had the grace to look embarrassed. "Did exaggerate. Significantly." "The thing is, Harlow Shipping is looking to invest in Western ventures, and I thought if you married into the family, it could benefit us both. You'd have capital to expand, and I'd have strengthened my position with an important client." "And Miss Harlow?" Zara asked quietly. "Did she know your true motives?" Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "She understood it was a mutually beneficial arrangement, her family's wealth, your land and local knowledge." He sighed at their expressions. "I see how it sounds now." "I just thought, you thought you knew better than me what I needed," Zachary interrupted. "Just like always. But Ethan, I don't want investors or expansion or social connections. I want what I've built with my own hands. I want peace after years of war. I want," he glanced at Zara, then back to his brother, "a life with someone who shares my values, not my ambitions." Ethan studied his brother's face, then looked at Zara with new consideration. "I think I'm beginning to understand," he said slowly. "And I truly am sorry for the disruption I've caused." "What about Miss Harlow?" Zara asked. "Her position is awkward to say the least." Ethan grimaced. "I've spoken with her. She'll be returning to Boston on Tuesday's train. Her father is displeased with the outcome, but I've accepted full responsibility." After Ethan departed for town, Zachary and Zara sat on the porch, watching the sun set over the distant mountains. The air between them felt charged with unspoken thoughts. "I meant what I said," Zachary finally broke the silence. "About wanting a life with someone who shares my values." Zara's heart quickened. "I believe you did." He turned to face her, his expression earnest in the fading light. "We've known each other only a few weeks, but I feel I know your character, your heart. You're the kind of person who sees what needs doing and does it without complaint, who faces challenges with grace, who treats others with kindness regardless of their station." "You make me sound better than I am," Zara said softly. "No," he disagreed. "If anything, I lack the words to express what I've come to admire in you." He hesitated, then reached for her hand. "I know our arrangement began as a practical matter, but my feelings have grown beyond practicality." "Mine as well," Zara admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then," Zachary said, his fingers tightening around hers, "would you consider making our arrangement permanent? Not because of our original agreement, but because we choose each other knowing who we are." "Yes," Zara answered without hesitation. "I would be honored to be your wife." The kiss that followed was gentle, tentative, a promise rather than a passion. When they parted, Zachary's smile held a lightness Zara hadn't seen before. "We should speak with Father Donnelly," he said, "unless you'd prefer to wait longer." "I think we've both waited long enough for happiness," Zara replied. The following weeks passed in a flurry of preparation. News of their engagement spread quickly through the community, met with general approval and some relief that the awkward situation with Miss Harlow had been resolved. Vivian herself departed as planned, though not without a final barbed comment to Zara when they crossed paths outside the general store. "I hope you realize what you're giving up," she'd said. "A life of comfort, culture, society." "I'm not giving up anything I value," Zara had replied calmly. "I'm gaining everything I desire." The wedding took place on a crisp October morning, with golden leaves carpeting the ground outside the small Genoa church. Margaret Hanson had helped Zara sew a new dress from cream-colored fabric, ordered specially from Cheyenne, and Mrs. Hopkins had created a bouquet from the last of the garden's hardy blossoms. The ceremony was simple, but meaningful, attended by neighbors and townspeople who had, in the weeks since her arrival, become Zara's community. Even Ethan returned from Denver, standing beside his brother with genuine happiness evident in his face. Father Donnelly spoke of partnership, of weathering life's storms together, of building something enduring. When Zachary and Zara exchanged their vows, the words were not merely ritual but genuine promises between two people who had chosen each other with clear eyes and full hearts. "I, Zachary, take you, Zara, to be my lawful wedded wife," he said, his voice steady and sure. "To have and to hold from this day forward for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do us part." When Zara repeated the vows, she felt the truth of each word resonating within her. This man, once a stranger whose advertisement had offered escape from destitution, had become the person she trusted most in the world. After the ceremony, the celebration moved to the Hansons' larger homestead, where tables groaned with contributed dishes and fiddle music inspired dancing that lasted well into the evening. As darkness fell, Zachary and Zara returned to their ranch, now truly theirs together. That night, as husband and wife, they discovered a new dimension to their growing bond. Zachary was gentle, considerate, guiding Zara through her initial nervousness to a deep, surprising intimacy that transcended the physical act. Afterward, lying in each other's arms, they spoke of hopes and plans for their shared future children they might have, improvements to the ranch, ways to strengthen their place in the community. "I never expected this," Zara confessed in the darkness. "When I answered your advertisement, I hoped for security, for partnership. I never imagined I would find love." "Nor I," Zachary replied, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "I thought I was too damaged by war, too set in my solitary ways. You've proven me wonderfully wrong." Life settled into new rhythms as autumn deepened into winter. The adjustment to marriage brought challenges, learning each other's habits, negotiating shared space and decisions, building intimacy, both physical and emotional. But these challenges were faced together, with honest communication and growing affection. December brought heavy snows that isolated the ranch for weeks at a time. They used the enforced seclusion to further deepen their bond, spending evenings reading aloud from Zachary's modest library, teaching each other skills. He showed her how to play chess. She taught him to knit, and sharing stories from their lives before they met. Zara learned more about Zachary's war experiences, not the battles themselves, which he still found difficult to discuss, but the camaraderie with his fellow soldiers, the responsibility of leadership thrust upon him as a young man, the ways the conflict had shaped his values and priorities. I saw too many men die over principles that seemed clear until you were knee-deep in mud and blood, he told her one night as they lay before the fire. It made me question everything I thought I knew about honor and purpose. When I came west, I was looking for something simple and real: land that responds to care, animals that thrive with proper tending, community based on mutual need rather than abstract ideals. In turn, Zara shared more about her childhood as the daughter of a skilled carpenter who had taught her to value craftsmanship, her mother's struggle with illness that had shaped Zara's practical approach to difficulties, and her brief, disastrous courtship with a young man whose charming exterior had hidden a cruel nature. "That's why your advertisement appealed to me," she admitted. "You asked for good character, not beauty or accomplishments. It suggested you valued substance over appearance." "And I found exactly what I sought," Zachary replied, drawing her close. Spring's arrival brought new energy to the ranch. Calving season kept them both busy from dawn until dusk, with Zara proving herself as capable in the barn as in the kitchen. The garden was expanded, and Zachary built additional chicken coops to increase their egg production. In May, a letter arrived from Ethan containing surprising news: he had married a schoolteacher from Denver, a woman who shared his ambition but tempered it with practical wisdom. "Clara reminds me a bit of your Zara," he wrote. "She sees through my grand schemes to what's truly important." More surprising still was his announcement that they were relocating to Cheyenne, where Ethan had accepted a position with a bank that served ranching communities. "I've come to appreciate that there's honor in understanding the needs of people who work the land," the letter concluded. "Perhaps I've finally learned something from my older brother." Summer brought the cattle drive to market in Cheyenne, Zachary's annual opportunity to convert a year's hard work into the money needed to sustain the ranch. For the first time, he invited Zara to accompany him, valuing her keen eye for quality and her growing knowledge of their operation. In Cheyenne, they stayed with Ethan and Clara, whose small but comfortable home reflected Clara's sensible influence on Ethan's previously ostentatious tastes. The brothers' relationship had eased into something resembling their boyhood closeness, with respect replacing the former competition. The cattle sale exceeded expectations, allowing Zachary and Zara to purchase additional breeding stock and make improvements to the ranch house, including a proper bathroom with a pump that brought water directly inside a luxury Zara appreciated more than any silk dress or fancy hat. As autumn approached again, Zara confirmed what she had suspected for several weeks: she was expecting a child. The news filled Zachary with a joy so profound it brought tears to his eyes as he placed a gentle hand on her still flat stomach. "A family," he said wonderingly. "Our family." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the winter months. Mrs. Hopkins, who had continued to help with heavier tasks even after Zara took over most household duties, became an invaluable source of practical advice and old-fashioned remedies for morning sickness and swollen ankles. Margaret Hanson visited regularly, bringing her daughters to help with mending and preserving while Zara's energy waned in the later stages. The community that had initially viewed Zara with curiosity now embraced her fully, with the women especially rallying around the expectant mother. In early April, just as the first wildflowers were beginning to dot the awakening prairie, Zara went into labor. The Hansons' eldest daughter rode for the midwife in town while Zachary paced anxiously outside the bedroom door, barred from entering by Mrs. Hopkins's firm decree that men are no use at such times. After 14 hours of labor, Zara delivered a healthy son with Zachary's blue eyes and a shock of dark hair. When Mrs. Hopkins finally allowed him into the room, Zachary approached the bed with reverence, taking in the sight of his exhausted but radiant wife and the tiny bundle in her arms. "Meet your son," Zara said softly, adjusting the blanket to reveal the infant's face. "I thought we might name him Matthew after my father." "Matthew Olsen." Zachary tested the name as he gently took the baby in his arms. "A fine name for a fine boy." As Zachary cradled his son, Zara observed the tenderness in his expression, the hardened former soldier and solitary rancher transformed by love into a gentle father. She thought of the journey that had brought them to this moment. A desperate gamble on an advertisement, a rival sent to replace her, a man who had recognized that beauty is fleeting but character endures. "I was thinking," Zachary said, returning the now sleeping infant to Zara's arms, "that when you're recovered, we might take a trip to Denver, have Matthew properly photographed. Start a family album." "I'd like that," Zara replied, touched by his desire to document their growing family. "And perhaps," he continued, a hint of mischief in his tired eyes, "we might stop in Genoa on the way and see if Mayor Williams and his wife would like to meet our son. I hear Miss Harlow returned for a visit last month." Zara laughed softly, careful not to disturb the baby. "You're not usually one for showing off." "This isn't showing off," Zachary corrected her. "This is sharing joy. Besides," he added with a smile that still made her heart quicken after more than a year of marriage, "I want the world to see what I found when I looked beyond surface beauty. A strong woman who brings life and purpose to everything she touches. A family built on mutual respect and genuine love." As if sensing he was being discussed, little Matthew stirred and opened his eyes, regarding his parents with the unfocused gaze of the newly born. Zachary placed his hand over Zara's where it cradled their son. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For answering my advertisement, for seeing value in what I offered, for choosing to stay even when a more glamorous option appeared, for making this ranch a home." Zara leaned forward to kiss him gently. "Thank you for choosing character over beauty, for seeing me as I truly am and loving me anyway." "Not anyway," Zachary corrected. "Because of who you are, beauty fades but character doesn't. And you, Zara Olsen, have the most beautiful character of anyone I've ever known." Outside their window, spring continued its relentless renewal, promising growth, change, and the endless cycle of seasons that would mark their lives together. The ranch would face droughts and blizzards, good years and lean ones. Their family would grow perhaps with more children, certainly with deeper connections to the community they had embraced. But in that moment, with their firstborn son sleeping peacefully between them, Zachary and Zara knew they had found something rare and precious, a love based not on fleeting attraction or convenient arrangement, but on genuine appreciation for each other's essential nature. It was a foundation strong enough to weather whatever challenges the frontier might bring, enduring long after surface beauty had faded into the deeper, more lasting beauty of lives well lived together. 5 years later, the Olsen ranch had grown considerably. With careful management and Zachary's increasing reputation for quality breeding stock, they had expanded to 300 acres and over 100 head of cattle. The original log house had been enlarged with a proper second story, giving them room for their growing family. Matthew, now 5, had been joined by 3-year-old twins Rebecca and Sarah, and 6-month-old James. The community of Genoa had grown as well, with a railroad spur line bringing increased commerce and new settlers. Ethan and Clara had moved from Cheyenne to open a branch of the bank in town, their own family now including 2 daughters who delighted in visits to their cousins at the ranch. On their 5th wedding anniversary, as they sat on the expanded porch watching their children play in the autumn sunshine, Zachary presented Zara with a leather-bound album. "Open it," he encouraged. Inside, Zara found a collection of photographs and mementos, their wedding announcement from the Genoa Gazette, Matthew's first photograph, locks of hair from each child, pressed flowers from the gardens Zara had cultivated, a sketch of the original ranch house before the expansions. "To document our journey," Zachary explained. "From strangers brought together by circumstance to a family bound by love," Zara finished, leaning against his shoulder. As the sun set over the Wyoming plains, casting long shadows across the land they had nurtured together, Zara reflected on the unlikely path that had led her to this life. A desperate choice, a rival's interference. A man wise enough to see beyond superficial beauty to the enduring quality of character. "What are you thinking?" Zachary asked, his arm warm around her shoulders. "That sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as challenges," Zara replied. "If Vivian Harlow hadn't arrived that day." Zachary smiled, the lines at the corners of his eyes earned through years of squinting into the western sun deepening with genuine happiness. "I would have chosen you anyway," he said with certainty. "Perhaps not as quickly, perhaps with more caution, but I would have recognized your worth." "And I yours," Zara assured him, watching as Matthew helped his little sisters chase a butterfly across the yard, the baby sleeping contentedly in his cradle beside them. This was wealth beyond measure, not in dollars or acres or social standing, but in love freely given and received, in work that held meaning, in a legacy taking shape in their children's laughter. It was everything Zara had never dared to hope for when she boarded that eastbound train 6 years ago, and everything she now knew she could never live without. "Beauty fades," Zachary murmured, echoing the words that had changed the course of their lives so long ago, "but character doesn't." "And love endures," Zara added, turning her face to receive his kiss as the first stars appeared in the darkening Wyoming sky.